All right. Time to kick this off. Kick it off. Holiday stream. We got Lionel Messi, formerly Richard F. in the chat. Good evening. Lionel, I guess we'll call you Lionel now. No longer Richard F. Does it sound too low?
I turned it up.
Turned it up? Yeah, it looks a little low on my end. It seems a smidge better. Let me know how it is now. If you're in chat, say hello. Give us a shout. Give us a shout out tonight. Maybe we got some lurkers tonight. We got some people who are very interested in what I'm going to say tonight. Dropped kind of an interesting article yesterday, huh? Kind of an interesting article. How are the volume? How's the volume? Better now? Worse? Not so good? I got my producer here fixing the audio volumes. Because, we're real professional here. We're very, very professional here at the Space Commune. We got Newplex and we got Cage. How's it going, guys? Good to see you. Good to see you in the chat. How's that? How's that better? Is that better? Sounds better now? Yeah, the worst thing is to do a whole stream and then realize that your audio is like jacked up. So it's better to fix it in the beginning. Volume's better now? Good. Yeah, it's like a little low. It looked a little low on my meter here. So I'm glad it is better now. So are you guys like excited for the big holiday weekend? Sounds great. Nomti, what is that? Relnum? Good to see you in the chat. You guys excited for the holiday weekend? Got any big plans? Personally, I'm excited to do the yearly watch of Muppet Christmas Carol. That's like probably my favorite tradition. Going to see family. That's cool. We got Costco in the chat. Yeah. I'm excited. I like to just lay around and eat, have a little drink, watch some holiday films. Very excited. No one gets my name. It's not my real name. Yeah, I think a lot of people use like pseudonames online, right? Got Christina Walker here. Very cool. Very cool. All right. This is going to be a fun one. I have a lot planned. We obviously have a big article to get through, a big essay that I wrote, which probably didn't earn me any new friends. But that's what I'm best at, right? I'm not good at making friends. Metalopoly we got. Merry Christmas to everyone. What's the topic today? What is the topic today? Well, Metalopoly. In the description of the stream, I have a link to an essay that I published yesterday, which took me about a day to write. And it's sort of revolving around a topic that kind of bubbled up to the surface with somebody we might all know, be familiar with somebody's tweet. Merry Christmas. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Lionel. Very excited for Christmas. I'm very excited. I'm just excited to relax. That's really what it's all about for me. It's just taking some time to chill out. Time to chill out. I can't believe the holidays are here already, right? I mean, kind of like snuck. It always does that. It always like sneaks up. But did you guys get all your Christmas shopping done? You got doxxed by potheads. Potheads are the worst, aren't they? Essay is a response to Noah, what's his name? Yeah. Yep. So, I guess we should just get right into it, right? We should get right into it. Always like to just give it a few minutes, wait for people to filter in, right? but we might as well get to it, right? I've got so much planned that I want to talk about tonight, so might as well get right in. So, this is the essay, Degrowth, Tankies, and Rhetorical War Against China. It's basically a two-part essay. The first part, you'll see. We'll go through it. So this essay begins with, let me zoom in so you guys can see, with a quote from Mao Zedong from 1930. No investigation, no right to speak. Unless you have investigated a problem, you will be deprived of the right to speak on it. Isn't that too harsh? Not in the least. When you have not probed into a problem, into the present facts and its past history, and know nothing of its essentials, whatever you say about it will undoubtedly be nonsense. Talking nonsense solves no problems, as everyone knows, so why is it unjust to deprive you of the right to speak? Quite a few comrades have always kept their eyes shut and talk nonsense, and for a communist, that is disgraceful. How can a communist keep his eyes shut and talk nonsense? Now, there's a link in here. I left a link to this short writing here. It's not super long. It's really good. It's a very, very good short little essay here. And I think it's very relevant. It's very relevant to a lot of the problems that we're seeing today within the communist, Marxist-Leninist, socialist movements, right? So check this out when you have a chance, because it's important. It's really important, important stuff here. So, early in the evening of December 20th, so this was like two or 3 days ago, I come across a tweet on my timeline from Noah Kratchvik. Apologies, Noah, if I'm saying your name wrong. So Noah says, "We will never again seek economic growth at the expense of the environment," and cites this as a quote from Xi Jinping. Now, I saw this tweet before it blew up. I got about 40 likes by the time I saw it, and I immediately was like, "Whoa, this tweet is very close to." So if you're familiar with me, you're familiar with my channel, I've studied the degrowth movement for a couple years now, right? I've put out a couple documentaries about it. I've put out a bunch of essays. Obviously, I talk about it on stream constantly. This is a topic which I am very well versed, right? I come from studying like the nonprofit industrial complex, which has brought me to the degrowth sector, right? Because the nonprofit industrial complex loves degrowth, right? It's all about environmentalism, degrowth, leftism, all comes together, right? So I've heard a lot of the talking points amongst the degrowthers, which is, and if you'll recall from previous streams, I've talked about this too, where it's posited that actually Jason Hickel and a man named Martin Kirk, who now works for Peter Buffett's Novo Foundation, came up with this idea to propagandize people. They openly talk about propagandizing people. They say we needed to create a concept, a way to create cognitive dissonance between the ideas of growth and life and economic, well-being. We didn't want growth and economic well-being to go hand in hand anymore. We wanted to make people think growth was a bad thing. So they put out a campaign called Growth or Life. The degrowth movement's been around for a while, but it's suddenly bubbling up to the surface now, and we're seeing it in the mainstream. We're seeing it all over the place. So this tweet sent my red flags right up in the air. This idea of comparing economic growth to something that we have to sacrifice the environment for. This is sort of the paradigm that the Western imperialist left likes to present to people, is that it is human growth, human flourishing, human population versus the environment, and that we can't have both, and that one has to come at the expense of the other. So, I was pretty upset by seeing this tweet, the way it was framed, and I thought to myself, I've heard Xi Jinping sort of take in that rhetoric, but also, provide sort of a counterbalance to it, where he'll say something like, we're not going to deplete our resources at the expense, we're not going to grow at the expense of the environment, but we're not going to limit our growth to save the environment either, right? I'm paraphrasing here, but always this sentiment comes with both, right? He makes sure to balance both. So I thought to myself, well, I need to see the context of this Xi quote, the way he's phrased it here, because I'd really like to add that much needed context here to my understanding, to everyone's understanding, make sure that message gets out there. So I was delighted to see that somebody else had already asked Noah for a source for this tweet. Somebody had already asked for a source for this quotation, and Noah replies that it's his address to the 20th Century Party Congress. So I quickly looked that up. Now looked it up. Here's the full text. The report of the 20th National Congress for the Communist Party. The full text is, it's in this document. I'm going to have to, give me a second here. I have to upload this. See, I work so hard to prepare these streams, and then I forget to do shit like this. It's all right. That's all right. You guys like it. You guys like it anyways. Yeah, you get a little ASMR clicking. Oh, goddamn. Hold on. So here it is, right? Download the document. You can re-upload it to Google Docs if you want to read it. It's long. I actually haven't read the whole thing. I'd like to read this whole thing because, Xi is he's a based man, and we should be reading his writing. But so I look for this. I mean, what is even the economic growth at the expense of the environment? So like, let's look for the word expense. Okay, so expense of others, brutal blood-stained path, enriched. No, that just has nothing to do with it. Oh, and then this just says medical expenses. So the word expense in here twice, that doesn't exist. All right. Environment. Let's look up growth. Okay. So here's some. We will advance the Beautiful China Initiative, take holistic system approach, promote concerted efforts to cut carbon emissions, expand development, and pursue economic growth. Okay. All right. It's in here a bunch. So to recall what Mao said, we need to investigate, right? We're investigating. I'm investigating. This is important, right? I mean, you could spend all day investigating things, right? Sometimes you just have to trust what people say, but like you should really like take the time to investigate things. And I say this to anybody who's reading my article. Investigate everything I've written here. Please challenge me. So this is what I did to Noah, right? I said, Noah, no, you're lying. This is not in here anywhere. This is not true. To To which, he got defensive. I get it. I was, I came at him, right? I came at him strong. I called him a liar. I said, you're lying. But he was lying. So it's true. He was lying. So he says that this tone doesn't get answers. All it does is needlessly anger people. I blocked every motherfucker who liked this because fuck that. Fuck this tone policing shit. If you're wrong, if you are caught in a lie, just admit it. Just say, you know what? I'm sorry. I thought it was from that and I didn't know. Let me look for the right the right source for this. Let me look for the right source because the people deserve to know. If we're going to investigate and find the truth, we deserve to know. No, Noah's not above being questioned. He's not above being questioned. And then he continues to, wag his finger at me. Well, no. You have to, maybe if you apologize, then I'll give you the source, which he still has not provided. And let me just say something here that I put myself out there, right? By me challenging him, I put myself out there because there's a possibility that G said this, right? There's a possibility that G said exactly what Noah said he said. I couldn't find a source for it, but there's a chance that I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I want to know. I want to hear it. I want to see it with my own two eyes. I would love to be proven wrong so that I can see for myself, But I still have not been provided this source. So I don't know. That sends up some red flags to me, right? That you cannot be challenged on these things. We should absolutely challenge, right? We shouldn't ever just accept something as the truth. We should not ever accept something without seeking to understand it ourselves. So I mean, I put myself out there. I could have looked foolish if he provided me with a source for the exact quote and said, "Here it is." Then I would have looked like a fool. I don't know everything. So, I mean, and still, I mean, if Noah wants to provide a source for this, which he claims supposedly it is a correct quote because it's G has said some similar things. But the problem is that what G has actually said, there are little tiny differences that seem small that are very important, right? That are very, very important differences. I mean, let me just skip to the bottom here and we'll look at what G actually said at the World Economic Forum. That was earlier this year, I believe, right? Yeah. January of 2022, Xi says, China will stay committed to promoting ecological conservation. Reject cookies. Fuck that. World Economic Forum cannot have my cookies. As I've said many times, we should never grow the economy at the cost of resource depletion and environmental degradation, which is like draining a pond to get the fish. Nor should we sacrifice growth to protect the environment, which is like climbing a tree to catch a fish. I mean, so this is really important, right? Because in the first clause, he says we should never grow the economy at the cost of resource depletion. Now, resource depletion is a very important distinction to make, right? Resource depletion and environmental degradation, which is like draining a pond to get a fish. Nor should we sacrifice growth to protect the environment, which is like climbing a tree to catch a fish. Very important distinction to make from we will never again seek economic growth at the expense of the environment. Very, very different, right? I mean, one says, okay, we'll play by your rules, but we're going to play by ours too. Now, this tweet only says, we're going to just play by your rules. That's it. we're just going to play by your rules, and that's it. Now, I'd like to point out to you, I didn't know this yesterday. I just was doing some more digging and researching today. Now, we found the actual source of Noah's quote. So I'm gonna get Noah off the hook here. I'm gonna show you guys where this quote comes from, where Noah got it from.
In front of everything is a consensus opinion.
Hold on, I think I have to re-cue this. Hold on.
1% support.
So just to preface this, he's talking about the Green New Deal versus China's ecological civilization. This is a guest. This guy's name is Carlos Martinez. He was a guest on Midwestern Marks. When was this from? 2 months ago.
In US Congress, it's maybe got 1% support in the British Parliament, whereas in China, like the idea of ecological civilization, of really prioritizing ecological issues in front of everything, is a consensus opinion. And Xi Jinping's got a very famous quote on this. He says, "We've got to strike a balance between economic growth and environmental protection. In the future, we're going to be more conscientious in promoting green, circular, and low carbon development. We'll never again seek economic growth at the cost of the environment." So, what they're doing, what they're rolling out, it's similar to.
So that's where this comes from. I'm not sure where Carlos Martinez is getting this from. So maybe the question should be tossed to him at this point, right? Maybe the question should be tossed to Carlos Martinez of where he saw Xi, this quote from Xi, because that's where that comes from. So I caught him in a lie. He got defensive. But this tweet is representative of a larger trend directly connected to the information war at a time when the imperialist ruling class is ramping up tensions with China at the expense of hardworking Americans and the international community alike by leveraging the existential threat of climate change. So I'm going to go into some detail about what is being proposed here and what I think people tied to Midwestern Marks and this larger ecosystem, media ecosystem are pushing, what kind of agenda they are pushing, right? What is this rhetoric representative of, right? And just before I go into the next part, I found this other clip too, where Eddie Liger and Carlos Garrido are talking about they're talking about various things, right? But they do mention degrowth in this and say that they are opposed to it. They equate it with Malthusianism and they say they're opposed to it. So I do want to give them credit for that, and I'm going to play this short little clip right now.
Ridiculous, but it's necessary now that people are realizing, statements from climate scientists around the world are explicitly saying, look, it's the system that we have that's destroying the planet. And it's pretty clear that the only way that you can deal with something like this without resorting to having the mass of the population in poverty and having degrowth and Malthusianism is through eco-socialism, through having a planned, rational metabolism between society and nature, to plan and to produce in such a way that you're conscious of the limits that are in nature and how to work dialectically with those so that you don't overpass them, but so that you continue to also grow and have conditions for people to flourish.
So I think, okay, so this is important, right? Because Carlos is coming out against degrowth, which is good, right? And he's comparing it to he's equating it with Malthusianism and saying we don't want these things. But the important thing here is that he is reifying the premise, right? That there are limits. This is where the limits to growth come from. this idea that we need to limit ourselves, that we need to create this sort of, it's this scarcity argument that always comes up that creates the ceiling on which we can grow, right? That there are limits to growth, which is what degrowth is based on, which is what Malthusianism is based on. And I'll give these guys a pass. I don't think that they watch my content, and that's fine. Like, if you guys are watching now, please, I'm happy to fill you in on this. But I think that there are people within the media ecosystem that they are part of that do know what they're doing. I think there are people who understand that this is part of the agenda, right, of the World Economic Forum and ultimately of degrowth. You can say, oh, I hate degrowth, but I think that we still need to live within our ecological limits. Then you basically are for degrowth, right? Then you're for degrowth. You believe this axiom of ecological limits. And this is the axiom that we need to excavate. We need to excavate this axiom of thinking, and we need to throw it in the trash, and we need to move forward. And this is why China's approach to environmentalism is fundamentally different than the Western. And so when you're comparing, how China is dealing with climate change versus the U.S. dealing with climate change, it's not a matter of like how many solar panels does each one have, how much carbon does each one emit. That is all based on this premise of ecological limits and having to reduce our consumption and the idea of limits to growth. The Chinese will tailor their rhetoric to they would have no reason not to tailor their rhetoric to not create any kind of reason for Western imperialist forces who are now leveraging climate, who are Malthusians and leverage climate change, basically created the climate crisis as a neo-Malthusian eugenic movement. But the Chinese have no reason to suddenly just say, oh, well, fuck that. We don't believe in that shit. They have to play along. They have to go along with this. Otherwise, they're starting a war, right? We're already seeing the West using it as an excuse to go to war with China. Why would they give them an extra reason? So, this is why it's important to understand how climate change rhetoric works, and how we need to approach it basically the same way that the Chinese are, right? But now I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so let's keep going with this. So Noah likes to talk about, he loves to talk about Midwestern Marx as one of the leading institutes for Marxist theory in the U.S. It's hard to find anything about Midwestern Marx, like who started it, why they started it, when it started. They don't have an about page, but they have like a page that lists all the people involved with it, and their sort of top dog seems to be this guy named Thomas Riggins, who's a retired professor. He has connections. He was on the board of the Bertrand Russell Society. He seems to have connections to sort of like the old guard of the left journalism, right? Which is why it makes sense that Midwestern Marx runs a lot of syndication feeds, right? Not everything that's published on Midwestern Marx is written by the people who work for it, right? Like the guys that we're familiar with, Eddie, Carlos, and Noah. It's not like everything is just coming from them. There's a lot of syndication that is run off of the website, and from sort of a media content creation perspective, you could say, sure, that's great that we're sort of pumping up the amount of content, which is making our channel more relevant. It's a way to sort of grow your channel, right? To get more eyeballs on your channel if you're putting more content out there. So we can't really fault them for that. We can't say, oh, well, that's bad. You shouldn't do that. I mean, sure, it's a content strategy for sure. Go ahead, do it. But we should examine what is behind that syndicated content, right? So the first thing that came across my timeline a few months ago that really kind of threw me for a loop was seeing an article published by Midwestern Marks about the electricity crisis in South Africa continues to brew. Now, let's see, this was 10/6. Okay, so this was like right before the conference that I just did, which was October 15th. I spoke at a conference called Defeat Green, Build the New Paradigm, Defeat Green Fascism. And it was all around energy and Africa, right? We had speakers from Africa. This is something I've been sort of keyed into. Is locally, the energy issues I'm very keyed into, and getting connected to the bigger world and seeing how, okay, this is what's happening, right? Is the degrowth movement, the Malthusians, the environmentalists are trying to push this renewable agenda. The World Economic Forum, right? They're trying to push this 100% renewable agenda. They're trying to say, keep fossil fuels, keep dinosaurs in the ground, right? Keep fossil fuels in the ground. Fossil fuels are bad. Everyone who makes profit off of fossil fuel is like, the evil Scrooge McDuck, Monty Burns capitalist who just wants to, the evil industrial capitalist, right? So this idea, like the stream or you hate humanity. That's right. Yeah, like the stream or you hate humanity. Listen to Anti-Woke Communist. So this idea that we have to transition to 100% renewables, most people, which also goes hand in hand with the anti-nuclear movement, but most people are not keyed into this, right? Most people are not keyed into the conversation around energy, right? They don't know how energy works. They say, well, renewables come from the sun and that's good, right? Or they come from the wind and the sun and they're more in tune with planet Earth, with Mother Gaia, and that's a good thing, right? And we can leave the fossil fuels in the ground because they're dirty and polluting and evil and yada yada. Well, it's not that simple. And we've put out a lot of content on this channel. I highly recommend listening. Just for starters, we put out a podcast episode with Meredith Engwin, who's an expert on the electricity grid, dispelling the myth of 100% renewables and why that's actually leading to fragility, blackouts, more expensive fuel. The long short of it is that renewable energy doesn't work all the time because wind doesn't always blow and sun doesn't always shine, and batteries that can store that excess energy when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, we don't have the capacity. We don't even know if we have the potential to have as much battery as we need to back up renewable energy. So what ends up happening is fossil fuel comes in to back up renewable energy, right? Coal or gas, petroleum, things like this. Or, nuclear too, but nuclear doesn't. So there's all these layers, right? There's all these different layers to the electricity grid that most people don't know. So I'm reading this article about Africa, right? And how they have this problem with load shedding and reliability. And the very end of the article recommends the best option is a socially owned and managed renewable energy that is on the table. Okay. So if we examine, if we investigate, oh good, this link doesn't work anymore. But don't worry because the link still exists in my article here. So this links to a paper by the Tricontinental Institute, and read through it. It's 40 pages. But basically what they do is they kind of condemn Chinese coal and Russian nuclear efforts in Africa to help them develop. And they say, no, we need a just transition where we have democratically owned all renewables, right? And I'm like, they're trying to do this in my backyard too. This is the exact same program that DSA is pushing in New York right now. So I don't need to be an expert on Africa to know that this is a bad idea, because what it's already resulted in is closing nuclear plants, making our electricity bills go up, and it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. And most people who actually are involved in this stuff, they know. You know, like, so this guy, Comrade Themba Godi, says, ESCOM campaign. So ESCOM is the utility, the electricity utility in Africa. As things stand, beyond coal, nuclear is the cheapest and reliable source of energy. ESCOM and government are on a fool's errand about solar and wind. Electricity for all, take a stand. And now here we got this. I found this other guy replying to Prashad, Vijay Prashad, saying, happy to explain why intermittent renewables will never replace dispatchable technologies. Nice idea, but never going to work unless we have loads of hydro, which we don't. So, I mean, here are people pushing back against this renewable stuff, right? Echoing stuff that I've said before. This is a problem. This is a major problem, right? To be pushing this kind of electricity agenda on countries that desperately need to build their infrastructure, that need to raise themselves out of poverty, is pushing this quote unquote green energy on them, right? This is a terrible, terrible thing that most people don't understand the details of it, because they think that all electricity is kind of just equal, right? But it's not. So Prashad, and I got to give a shout out to Chris Morlock, because he's done some connecting that I kind of found in my research as well. So Vijay Prashad, who's responsible for a syndication on Midwestern Marks, he's also a guest star on their streams a lot. He's a big name. He's a big name who brings audience to Midwestern Marks. He co-wrote a book with John Bellamy Foster, who is another big name, right? John Bellamy Foster is a guy, Marxist, runs Monthly Review, which is a pretty well-known Marxist online journal. So these guys co-wrote a book together. They're buddies. John Bellamy Foster, also sort of a big name that's republished on Midwestern Marks. Now, John Bellamy Foster is sort of the he has this sort of protege who I've talked about a few times, right? This Japanese academic Marxist named Kohei Saito, who has written some very interestingly titled books. This one really strikes me the most. Marx in the Anthropocene, Towards the Idea of Degrowth Communism. What a killer. What a fucking killer is that, guys? I mean, to hear that is like so sad. To hear that shit. It's nonsense. There's no such thing as degrowth communism. If you know anything about, studying Marx and Lenin and all the great thinkers, degrowth communism makes absolutely no fucking sense. Yeah, Yikes is right. Yikes is right. So in his academic work, Saito has followed John Bellamy Foster in showing that it is wrong to claim, as some Greens do, that Marx and Engels ignored the impact of capitalism on the planet and the environment. In particular, Saito won a prize for his learned analysis of Marx's notebooks on agriculture and the exhaustion of soil. In his earlier work, Saito points out that his approach is a clear continuation of the metabolic rift theory advocated by Foster and Burkitt. Saito argues that it is quite apparent today that mass production and consumption under capitalism has tremendous influence on the global landscape and causes ecological crises. So Marx's theory needs to respond to the situation with a clear, practical demand that envisages a sustainable society beyond capitalism. Capitalism and material conditions for sustainable production are incompatible. This is the basic insight of eco-socialism. The antagonism between red and green needs to be dissolved. And this is a whole article. This is from a whole article called Metabolic Rift and Degrowth Communism. So this metabolic rift theory is like the basis of this degrowth communism bullshit, right? Metabolic rift theory is the brain baby of John Bellamy Foster and an often cited and written about topic on Midwestern Marx editors and self-proclaimed Marxists. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I got to call you guys out here, but so this is a little back and forth here about Saito. Chris Morlock has been, again, he's been really great about calling out Saito and how much bullshit his work is. But Eddie comes in and says, I'm pretty sure the metabolic rift comes from chapter 3 of Capital, volume 1. That's where Ian Angus draws from in his Facing the Anthropocene texts anyways. And then I think Noah brings this up too. Now, I hope I can bring them in. Right, he had a back and forth with Peter. Bring them into a dialectical view, right? Because Peter is saying you're attracting all these anarchists and degrowthers with your tweet, which is true. The anarchists love that tweet. And Noah says, well, I hope I can bring them in and lead them to a dialectical view, like Marx talks about in Capital 3, nature's metabolism and balance with human society. So again, we're hearing this nature's metabolism in Capital 3, right? So Eddie says this, chapter 3 of Capital Volume 1. So they both think it's like in Capital. Now, no investigation, no right to speak. I had to investigate this myself, and I did. The word metabolism only exists once in the 3 volumes. I'm blanking on which volume. I want to say 2. I can't remember, but go look for it yourself. They're online. You can find them. Control F. Look for that word. It appears once, and it's only talking about social metabolism as sort of a metaphor for how money get traded back and forth. It's about commerce. It has nothing to do with nature. Nothing to do with nature. This metabolic rift thing is like totally made up. It's made up. Or it's like, I don't know, they're not providing the right source. Again, I don't know. But it seems like this metabolic rift theory is just, and let me go ahead and just say, I kind of feel bad for these guys because I feel like they're surrounded by people who are well respected, right? People like John Bellamy Foster, Vijay Prashad. These are like big names, right? These are big name people, well respected, and they probably just trust them. They trust them to what they're saying is true, and you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, I get why you can't. It's hard to just investigate everything, right, all the time. But every now and then, you got to take a step back and say, does this seem right to me? I want to see for myself if this is really true, right? I got to see if this is really true. I mean, so if we go back to what Mao was saying, it is quite wrong to take a formalistic attitude and blindly carry out directives without discussing and examining them in the light of actual conditions simply because they come from a higher organ. It is the mischief done by this formalism which explains why the line and tactics of the party do not take deeper root among the masses. To carry out a directive of a higher organ blindly and seemingly without any disagreement is not really to carry it out, but it is the most artful way of opposing or sabotaging it. I mean, this is why we have to investigate everything that we're especially so like Noah calls himself an expert, right? He goes around touting that he is an expert, one of the leading Marxist institutes. He needs to investigate what he is telling people, because if you're saying I am an expert, people are gonna believe it. They're gonna trust you. People trust Noah. This is the problem. That people trust Noah. And he's giving them wrong information, and that's not good. That's not good, folks. Not good. Not good. Whether he intended to or not. You know, I don't want to read any kind of intention, right, into this. Whatever. He made a mistake. It's fine. He's not. I'm not canceling him or anything. But this is like important to recognize, right? Because if we can't get this right, then we're murdering the movement in its cradle, right? This is not a way we can operate. We have to investigate. We have to investigate for ourselves what the truth of the matter is. We can't just trust people because they have a lot of social capital and they have well-respected this or that. I mean, we have to examine for ourselves where is the truth? Where's the truth? So this metabolic rift thing, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. This is what this degrowth communism is all based on. This axiom of the metabolic rift, which is, it's nonsense. You know, it's nonsense. So here's where we drop the hammer. So now we've established the connection between Midwestern Marx, Vijay Prashad, John Bellamy Foster, Kohei Saito, the renewable energy agenda, degrowth communism, and the bogus metabolic rift theory. It may not come as a surprise that Prashad's Globetrotter, a project of the Independent Media Institute, since as early as 2004, has been funded by left-wing philanthropies, such as the Open Society Institute, which is now the Open Society Foundation, the Ford and Tides Foundation, just to name a few. I mean, so this is on the Wayback Machine here. We got Independent Media Institute. Alternet is a program of the Independent Media Institute. And here's all the funding as of 2004, right? Got all the big names in there. All the big names. Not looking so good here. Not looking so good. And just to show you the other links too. Just so you can see for yourself. And please investigate on your own all this. Well, I'll take you to the full path here. We got, this article was produced by Globetrotter, Independent Media Institute, And we got, here's Globetrotter. There's VJ. Independent Media Institute. IMI funding. And there it is. I mean, that's it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. It sucks. It sucks. It's unfortunate. But hey, I mean, I've been there. I've come to, that's really what the NPIC video is all about, is realizing that everything that I thought I believed in was actually bullshit manufactured by the ruling elites, right? By the nonprofit industrial complex. And it sucks. So, I mean, some people might recall that the Congress for Cultural Freedom, a covert project by the CIA to uplift specific anti-communist Marxist voices to create a compatible left in the Western sphere, influencing young socialists to disavow actually existing socialism around the world. This program was initially funded by the Ford Foundation and later absorbed as a project of Open Society's foundation. So, are we seeing what could be called the compatible Marxist-Leninist left? Or the compatible tanky left? Is it possible the job of the new tanky left is to appear friendly towards Russia and China while pushing the degrowth, climate change, imperialist agenda? This is where my mind is at now. This is the question I have that I'm investigating at the moment, right? And I'm not going to say with certainty that yes it is, but this is what I want us to consider, right? This is what I want us to consider. You know, I wanted to be fair, right? And show that Eddie and Carlos and all them, they have been vocally opposed to degrowth. They have said they're against Malthusianism, they're against degrowth, and for that, I do give them credit. But we do need to keep investigating, right? We need to keep investigating. And I don't know, maybe it's time for these guys to take a hard look at their organization, at Midwestern Marx, because I'm not so sure that they hold the same opinions as Midwestern Marx, right? Who even is Midwestern Marx, right? When we think of Midwestern Marx, we think of Eddie and Noah and all them. But I think maybe Thomas Riggins has more say. I don't know who's pulling the strings here, but surely you'd think that they'd have some articles opposing degrowth, right, on this site. So if we type in degrowth on their site, we come up with 3 results. One is this article that I just had a link to on the screen: Eco-Socialist Degrowth Against Infinite Accumulation. So this is pretty damning, right, to have this here. This is pretty overtly pro degrowth. We're citing some pretty big names in the degrowth movement here. Giorgio Calise, pretty rough one here to see. But let's check out these other ones, right? Check out some of these other links. Find the word degrowth here. Yikes, not looking good. Not looking good. Degrowth offers a path to solidarity. As such, pursuing a path of eco-socialist degrowth in the global north is the only way to create a meaningful project of solidarity for the global working class. Not looking so good here. Not looking so good. What if tech startups became community-owned co-ops? Interesting. Exit to community. Oh, well, let me read the question first. Will you explain a little bit about why the exit to community model is part of the solidarity economy? Exit to community, like community land trusts, concessional loans, and mutual aid networks, is about centering community ownership and democratic governance for political, cultural, and economic power. This emergent movement goes by many names: economic democracy, regenerative economics, community wealth, just transition, self-determination, degrowth, the commons, and local community economic development. But internationally, it is known as the social and solidarity economy, or solidarity economy for short. The solidarity economy is a term used internationally to describe sustainable and equitable community control of work, food, housing, and culture using a variety of organizational forms. Its principles include cooperation, participatory democracy, intersectional equity, sustainability, and pluralism. Especially today, when startup tech companies dominate the lives of billions of people, exit to community is an essential tool for building power, cultivating economic democracy, and centering community ownership. Now, this reminds me of something that I've heard before that I'd like to play for you guys. Degrowth, transition town, new economy. Am I crazy? Or is this all starting to sound like the same thing?
What do mutual aid networks, worker co-ops, community land trust, participatory budgeting, and time banks have in common? Community ownership and democratic governance that builds political, cultural, and economic power. When these hyperlocal initiatives get together, they have enormous power. This emergent movement goes by many names. But internationally, it's known as the social and solidarity economy, or solidarity economy for short. The people who have been most harmed are creating community-controlled, hyper-local economies that are resilient amidst crisis. Artists are the original gig workers. Culture making and political organizing go hand in hand.
Well, that could be a powerful political voice. That could be a powerful voice for action. That could be a powerful voice for protest.
So the task is not to ask ourselves whether we want to move to a post-growth economy, but prepare for it.
Oh my God, he's threatening us. That guy is such a creep. Oh man, that guy lives in my town too. He knows where I live. These people are the fucking enemy, man. These guys are the enemy. That guy, the last guy who like threatened at the very end, he's the guy who created the post what is it, growth or life. He's the one I was talking about in the very beginning, who started that campaign for creating cognitive dissonance between the idea of growth being a good thing, right? So, I mean, come on, guys. When I say, like, I'm familiar with this language, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Like, I've seen it. Like, they almost verbatim repeated what was said in that article. It's crazy, right? Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. But let's look at the very last one here. Let's look at this last degrowth article. Maybe this one is the saving grace, right? Ooh. Against left-wing contrarianism. And we have a picture of Caleb here. Interesting. Well, let's figure out where it says degrowth in here. All right. Maupin writes, okay, so this is a critique of Caleb's book, BreadTube Serves Imperialism. So Maupin writes, while Matt accepts the premise that capitalism is capable of creating endless growth, Matt is Thought Slime, by the way. Matt thinks this is bad, and in their video championing degrowth, Thought Slime argues that humans have gone too far. The problem isn't that working people are increasingly impoverished due to capitalism's inherent creation of poverty amidst plenty. The problem is that average working people have too much stuff. As American workers are seeing their wages go down, their homes foreclosed, and their children condemned to a life of student debt, the problem is that they are still too comfortable. Thought Slime anticipates an ecological apocalypse unless human consumption can urgently be reduced. Matt insists that their degrowth model is not the same as capitalist austerity. Okay, so that's from Caleb's book. And this author says, this is a complete misunderstanding of Thought Slime's words. Matt is not arguing for degrowth. Rather, they are arguing that capitalists, by not engaging in a more sustainable mode of consumption, are destroying the planet. This fact is undeniable. He says they keep going forever, or more realistically, until they can't. And at that point, we are doomed. A human being intuitively understands this concept of finite resources. Again, limits to growth, finite resources. That is the axiom. I keep saying this over and over again because that's the important axiom, right? You can say, I'm not for degrowth. I'm not a Malthusian, but we got to stay in our limits. There are limits to growth. That's what we have to get over, right? That it's a trade-off between growth or life, right? That it's some sort of trade-off, and we can't have both, which is absurd. We need both. We need both to live. Without growth, you're dead. So that's it. That's all everything on Midwestern Marx about degrowth. Now, Eddie, Carlos, if you disagree with these statements, good. I'm glad. And Noah too, right? If you disagree with these statements, then good. We're in solidarity and we're on the same page. But you gotta like do something about it. Maybe you gotta quit being part of this organization because this is what Midwestern Marx is about. Unfortunately, I mean I don't know what to tell you or steer the organization in a different direction. But this is what it's about. It's about supporting degrowth. That's what it comes down to, unfortunately. I mean, am I wrong? Am I wrong here? I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think that I'm accusing anyone of anything that is, like, not true, I've presented evidence, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of all this? Is it upsetting? I know that these guys are very likable. So, I like them too. I mean, I like these guys. But we have to be honest, right? We have to be honest in what we're doing, what we're pushing. And ultimately, degrowth and climate change and all this stuff is about clamping down on productive forces and, maintaining class society. That's what it's about. So that's the first half of the article, is sort of exposing all these connections here, right? Exposing all that, talking about that. What I didn't include in the article is that, and maybe someday I'll go into this in more detail in another essay or something, but China has been under pressure for a long time about how much they're growing, right? How much carbon they're emitting. A lot of this rhetoric about being anti-growth and about climate change is really an attack on China, an attack on overpopulation, right? It's quote unquote overpopulation. it reminds me of that. Do you guys remember that tweet from like a week or so ago from the guy who said he was like a journalist with Raw Story, and he was like, China is just too overpopulated, right? And funny enough, Raw Story is owned by the same people who own Alternet now. So a little connection there, right? But the second half of this article really goes into detail with showing the difference between China's approach to things that are happening and the American point of view or the Western point of view. I believe none of us want to see global warming, but all of us want to see a warming of China-U.S. cooperation, said Qin Gang, Chinese ambassador to the U.S. Which he stated in his keynote speech at the U.S. CBC Gala on December 6th in Washington, D.C. So this is like the business, the U.S.-China Business Council. And they had their gala. And he said some really good stuff in his speech. And I'll read some of his statements here. So the theme of the gala was climate change, and Qin Gang echoed the people-centered environmental sentiment of Xi Jinping in his statements. He said the party Congress has set out the central task of the party for the new era, which is we will advance the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts through a Chinese path to modernization. Chinese modernization, as a key word of the report, has Chinese characteristics, such as a huge population, pursuit of common prosperity, coordinated material and cultural ethical advancement, and it also reflects the aspirations of the entire humanity, such as a peaceful development and harmony between man and nature, which will benefit both China and the whole world. China follows the people-centered development philosophy and takes the people's aspirations for a better life as the starting point and final goal of its development. People-centered. I mean, that's an important characteristic. Do you guys think that our environmentalism is people-centered? I don't think so. Our environmentalism, which is really the history of environmentalism, comes out of the eugenic movement, is one that says people are the problem. People are the virus to Mother Gaia. It's Gaia worship. The 1.4 billion Chinese people are pursuing common prosperity through high-quality development. This means the Chinese people's purchasing power will continue to grow and their consumption will expand. It will create more market and development opportunities for the U.S. and other countries. So, I initially came across this speech because I was furiously Googling Noah's tweet to figure out where it came from. And in this part of the speech, he actually says something very close to Noah's tweet or quote that he attributed to Xi Jinping. But here's the full context. Harmony between man and nature is a main feature of Chinese modernization, and a pledge made by China to the world. Lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. This is an essential requirement of high-quality development. China will not develop at the expense of the environment. Instead, we have announced the goal of achieving carbon peaking before 2030 and carbon neutrality before 2060. And we've introduced a roadmap and an action plan and specific measures and to reach the goal. Okay, good. So they're playing along, right? The ruling imperialist West, the people who are in charge of the world, the unipolar world order has put out that, we want to make sure we reduce our carbon footprint. These are the goals. And China is saying, all right, well, we're going to fucking do it. We're going to fucking do it. And we're going to do it better than you. But, they're taking it seriously, right? They're taking it seriously. They're being mature. They're being mature adults about it. So another part is that he spoke about the economic decoupling, which is something that's being pushed by the West right now, is to decouple from China, because we rely so much on China economically that a lot of our leaders, our political leaders, see that as a problem. They see that as a problem because when you're economically dependent on somebody, you can't go to war with them, right? They see it as a threat to their hegemony. And that's really all it's about. This is why there's so much anti-China sentiment, right? Some people worry that a tense China-U.S. relationship will hamper our economic and trade cooperation. I share this worry. China and the U.S. are major trading and investment partners. Our industries are deeply integrated and complementary. Our cooperation has huge potential to tap. Having said all this, the U.S. defines China as the most serious competitor and the most serious long-term geopolitical challenge. Out of grave strategic misperception and misjudgment. Because of this, it has imposed export controls, import restrictions, investment reviews, as well as measures in tech cooperation, industry supervision, and industrial subsidies. These measures have reduced semiconductors, new energy, and other areas that should have provided business opportunities to some no-go areas. Now, this matches up with sort of what right-wingers who are critical of the renewable industry and pro-nuclear, or even just liberals, some of it's just liberals who might be left or right wing, but it seems more predominant among right wing liberals who are critical of China because of the ecological movement, because they think that this is China trying to take over the world with solar panels, which is ridiculous. It's flat out ridiculous because China is helping the world develop its nuclear capacity, while the United States and a lot of Europe is destroying its own. And whose fault is that? It's not China's, but they want to frame it as China's the enemy. China just wants to sell us the rope to hang ourselves with. But we don't have to close our nuclear plants. We don't have to do that. We don't have to become 100% renewable. We don't have to do that. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't. It's irrational. It's totally irrational. They run counter to the principles of market economy and rules of international trade and are disruptive to the global industrial and supply chains. Let me give you an example. The U.S. has recently introduced several restrictions on semiconductor export to China. These restrictions will cost the global semiconductor industry almost $10 billion in the next 3 years and bring considerable negative impact to the mid to long term. What the U.S. needs is growing its economy, adding jobs, cutting inflation, and reducing budget deficits. I mean, is any of that not true? Don't you wish our own politicians would actually fucking do that? Isn't it funny that somebody in China is this is what you guys need to do. And we're not doing it. We're not fucking doing it. Healthy, stable, and cooperative trade relations with China will serve America's own interests. Stretching the concept of national security and politicizing and weaponizing economic and trade ties should not be the real purpose or normal state of such ties. Building a small yard with high fences, cutting off supplies, and seeking decoupling are detrimental to both oneself and others. Cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? That's what they're doing. This is what our leaders are doing. They're cutting off their nose to spite their face. We should not let national security stand in the way of economic development and improvement of people's lives in both countries. On issues concerning the economy and trade, people need to face the reality that China and U.S. are deeply integrated. People should take the interests and voice of the business community seriously, follow business rules, and conduct professional decisions. To decouple from China is to decouple from potentially the biggest market in the world. To cut off supplies for China is to cut off itself from opportunities. Now, if we compare this to this op-ed in the New York Times from this guy named Robert Lighthizer, who is a trade representative in the Trump administration, he's much more brief. He says there are two fronts in any contest with China, the economic front and the national security front. They are not entirely separate. One affects the other, and for policymakers, that is the point. We must prepare in both spheres, economic and military, because the best way to avoid a military crisis is to maintain our economic superiority. The purpose of strategic decoupling would be to benefit America, not punish China or hold it back. It has become clear that China is not a friend or a partner in development, but rather an adversary bent on world dominance. Now, is this projection or what? This is like such projection of the U.S. empire and ruling class. This is the most hypocritical thing you can imagine, right? Could you imagine? It's like holding up a mirror and saying, "Oh my, there's the bad guy," you know, right? Projection 101. China wants to be partners with the U.S. They don't want to go to war with the U.S. Why would they want to go to war with the U.S. and dominate? You know, like China has never shown any signs of wanting to dominate the world. You know, this is what the Western imperialists do. This is not what China wants to do. I mean, we need win-win cooperation. People in the West are conditioned to take opposing sides in a debate of ideas. You're either all wrong or all right. You're either for it or against it. The Chinese approach to environmentalism is not the Western approach to thinking about things, of left versus right. It's about understanding the whole picture and navigating the differences to pursue a higher truth, right? The dialectic. It is our job to reveal to the public the reality about the U.S.-China relationship, not play into mainstream rhetoric about environment versus humanity by tweeting, "We will never again seek economic growth at the expense of the environment." I already read to you guys what Xi Jinping actually said, which is the two statements together, which is so fucking important, which Noah did add later in the tweet after it got, he got some flack about that. Not from me, from other people. So, it must be both, just as it must be both the U.S. and China leading the global economy together. It must be both humanity and the environment, not humanity or the environment. This is what win-win cooperation and world peace through development looks like. United we stand, divided we fall. Divided we will fall and be subdued by the ruling class, George Soros, who calls Xi Jinping the greatest threat to open societies. And divided we will fall to Mother Gaia, to natural disasters and famine. Decoupling from China would be a disaster for our economy. You think shit's expensive now? Just wait. Xi Jinping's thought on ecological civilization is about harmony between mankind and nature. In the West, we are taught that these are opposing forces, that humanity is a virus on the planet which precludes us from considering an anti-Malthusian, pro-humanity position such as the one guiding China. There are no limits to growth. China does not see environmentalism as limits to growth. They say, no, we will not give up growth for the environment, but we will also not destroy the environment to the point where it's degraded and we can't use it anymore. But they don't buy into that limit, right? That there's a finite resources and that eventually we're going to hit a ceiling. No, they don't operate that way. But that is the axiom that underlies the environmentalist movement in the West. Not only must we investigate the present facts and its past and history, but we must also investigate the rhetoric that surrounds it. We must understand how fighting climate change is used as a rhetorical cudgel to punish the enemies of the imperialist West, as well as its own citizens via economic austerity and war. We must resist the urge to repeat anti-human degrowth narratives of the ruling class Malthusians. Otherwise, we have no right to speak. So that's my essay. I have an important video that I want to watch with you guys. Because I wanted to include parts of it in this essay, but it's a 13-minute video and it's really fucking good. And it hits home all the points that I want to talk about. But I'm just going to do it on stream with you guys because I think that's better. I think that's better to just watch this together. So what do you guys think of that article? Is it crazy? Is everyone gonna hate me now because I talk shit about the nice guys at Midwestern Marks? They seemed pretty upset about it today. Which I get, I get it, It's pretty awesome. Thank you. Thank you, views. I get it. I'd be upset too. But I hope I'm clarifying some things. I hope that I'm bringing some clarity to the discussion. I hope I'm elevating the discussion with this essay and with this live stream. No, I did a respectful critique backing up your arguments with facts. Thank you. I know I can be like, I can be in your face, right? Oh, you love space commune? Thank you, Hakeem. But you gotta like, sometimes you just gotta put it out there, right? You gotta be bold. Maybe it's the New Yorker in me, like, they're Midwesterners. I'm a New Yorker. In New York, we're just like, we just say it like it is. And it's not personal, it's not personal. We're just like in your face. And I get the Midwestern thing because my mom she was born and raised in Wisconsin. So my whole extended family on my mom's side is from Wisconsin. And I get it. I guess it's a different way of operating. And I love the Midwest. I love Midwesterners. But I'm a New Yorker, I'm a New Yorker. I can't help it. Forget about it. You notice Eddie was tweeting against Malthusianism last night. That's good. I mean, so what's funny is like even the degrowthers themselves will say that they're anti-Malthusian, right? Peter's documentary went through this quite a bit. There's a degrowther named Giorgio Calise who wrote a book called Limits: Why Thomas Malthus Was Wrong. So it's pretty common in degrowth circles for them. I mean, even they get defensive and they say, oh, degrowth is not about Malthusianism. We do not believe in overpopulation. That is bullshit, But when you parse it out, what you learn is that both degrowth neo-Malthusian, degrowth, and classic Malthusianism are all based on the same axiom, which is that there are limits to growth. Degrowth is based off of the models, the computer models of some scientists in the 1970s who basically rebooted Malthus's model, which was debunked, right? Malthus's model is there's two curves, right, of population growth and resources. He says that population grows geometrically, meaning like exponentially, and that resource and food grows arithmetically, meaning it's only a straight line that just goes straight up. He did not anticipate that food and resources would grow, could grow at the same rate as the population. So he was proven wrong. So then they came up with a new model in the 1970s called limits to growth. It was a MIT model of experiment done on computers to spit out all this data and show it had a lot more lines in it, so more lines means more correct. But even that study has been proven to be debunked at this point. 50 years later, it's been proven wrong, though a lot of people will deny that. A lot of degrowthers still believe in the limits to growth. If you watch their own documentary, there's a documentary called Fairy Tales of Growth that I used a lot of clips from it in my documentary Consumerism. Happy Festivus, Lumpia Logic. Good to see you, Lumpia. Festivus for the rest of us. You got your Festivus pull up? But yeah, and check out my Consumerism doc. And Fairy Tales to Growth is is the degrowth documentary, and they even say like their research, their whole thing is based off of the limits to growth. So, if it walks like a duck, it's a duck, right? If it quacks like a duck. Liking the stream boosts it in the algorithm. If you refuse to like it, then you're a wrecker. That's right. I have to threaten people, right? I have to threaten you guys and say, you better like the stream, like and subscribe. Also, join the Patreon. We have a growing Discord community where we talk about degrowth a lot. It's like one of the main topics. We talk about information war, all kinds of stuff. I'll probably I'm thinking about starting to do some like, what are they called? Voice chats with the Discord community. So if you're interested in that, if that sounds like something that you would like to do, some voice chats, consider joining the Patreon at the $5 level. That'll get you into the Discord and discounts on the merch. At the $15 level, you get actual merch rewards, like shirts and stuff. I just put out a new t-shirt design because I like to design t-shirts for fun. So check that out. It's very pro-China. It goes with the theme of what we're talking about. Oh, good, Cage. I would love to have you in the Discord. We're old buddies at this point, right? In internet years, we're old buddies. Cage has seen some shit, but yeah, very cool. I'd love to see you in the Discord. So I'm gonna play this video for you guys. Alex found this video and sent it to me. It's really, really awesome. I'll probably pause it a lot and talk about it. It's about 14 minutes long. And it is in Chinese, but it has subtitles. So hopefully you guys can read. I wish it was in English, but that's okay. So it's from 2010. Can I design aprons? Sure. Yeah, if you ever have any things that I think on that website, so I'm using like Spring, which isn't great. it's not like the best site, but they do offer a lot of like random stuff that you can design. Now it won't pull up. Oh, I can't pull up like all the products. I mean, it's mostly shirts. This site is so annoying. Discover products? Maybe that will do it. All categories. No, goddamn. This website fucking sucks. I don't know if they do aprons or not. Let's see. I'll just Google it. This website is so fucking annoying. Spring shirts apron. Oh, we got this like sexy naked lady. I'll look into it. An apron. That's really an interesting interesting idea. If you have any like ideas for stuff, I always like suggestions. It's fun. But okay, yeah, so context for this video. So China's chief climate expert Jing Zhongli, interviewed by notorious environmentalist Chai Jing in 2010. So about almost 13 years ago at this point. Let's give it a watch.
这次哥本哈根给人的感觉是一直在尖锐和激烈的争吵，到底在吵什么？
问题啊，很简单，就是今后不同的国家还
How
能
much
排
different
放多少二氧
carbon
化
dioxide
碳？
countries
这个
can,
排放多少？
how much different countries can emit, how much carbon dioxide different countries emit in the future?
不同的国
Important
家
stuff here.
还能排放多少二氧化碳？
这个排放多少背后的实质又是什么？
简单一句话就是说，这个问题是同能源问
Linked to energy and development issues.
题连在一起，同你的发展问题连在一起。所以说，争半天就是我还能排放
How much can I emit and how much energy can I use?
多少，我还能使用多少能源。简单就是这个，
那您的意思是说，这个排放权意味着未来的发展权利？
这个是肯定的。
这个排放权对于普通的国民来说又意味着什么呢？
意味着生活的改善嘛。
So it means, so this translates, emission use translates to improvement of life, development of the country. The more you emit usually correlates with how much how much the citizens' lives are improving.
意味着这国家的发展的你的福利能不能进一步的这个
Whether your
这个
welfare
增加
can
嘛？
be further
也
increased.
意味着你有没有工作啊？许多人都把它理解为是一个科学的结论。这个2度是怎么来呢？2度是计算机模拟出来的。这个计算机算就是相当于三明先生。
So, I was just talking about the limits to growth, right? That's this, the limits to growth. And this came out of a computer. So this is exactly what he's talking, same concept as what he's talking about here.
生的那个水晶球嘛，他不会去考察地质历史时期的时候升温降温时候的那些变化，他就计算计算，算完了以后得出一个结论：假如升温2度，就会产生这个多少多少物种的灭绝。这是英国人有一个研究
Of course, it's done by a British research group. I love that that's in there.
小组做的，这个结论就是马上很流行了，流行以后嘛，那就是变成一个价值判断了，就我们不能让它再增温了。
那如果说它模拟计算出来这一切是可信的话，那不就是也是一个依据吗？
你怎么知道它可行？
我们几乎是信仰实验室里所有依据数据
它不是实
计
验室
算出来。
它是计算。
Boom, it's not a laboratory, it's a computer. This is, I mean, this guy is so based. I love it. He's talking about how they've created all of these sort of randomly computer generated limits, right? Oh, we can't do this certain amount of emissions because then the planet will explode and we'll all die, right? This is the premise that all this climate change legislation and rhetoric is based off of, just something spit out by a computer that we put so much faith into, right? We put all of our faith into, well, the computer must be right.
你怎么知道它是可信是不可信？
How do you know if it's credible
第
or
一是我
not?
们当然知道科学界有反对和怀疑的声音，但是给我们的印象是，因为 IPCC 的这样的一个研究的组织，它也是各国的科学家在一起拿出一份报告，而且也是因为有这个报告做基础，全世界的国家会到那儿去开一个气候的大会，所以给我们的印象，它是得到了主流科学界的认同的。
科学家有主流吗？
Does science have a mainstream? I mean, this guy, oh, he's so fucking based. I love it. Every response is so good. You know, she's saying, well, it's, you know, it's accepted within the mainstream. This is accepted. And he's, you know, why should there be a science mainstream?
我们理解的主流是，
科学家是根据这个人多人少来定的吗？
Science is the judgment of the truth. Yes. I mean, this is what Marxism is, right? It's finding the truth, right? This man is so based. I know. I love him. He's so awesome. He nails it. It's judgment. This is why Marxism is a scientific method, right? Of finding the truth. It's not about just accepting what the people above you dictate and say and just not investigating for yourself, not investigating to find the truth and just going along with whatever the mainstream of science says, right? No. This is why science, when people talk about science, you're a science denier. You don't believe science. What they're really saying is like, oh, you're against eugenics. And that's why I say, yes, I am a science and climate denier because I'm against eugenics. Because that's what's being pushed on us. It has nothing to fucking do with actual science. It has nothing to do with actual science. It's about something decided on high by a computer that is pushed down to the masses to maintain the existing order of things. It has nothing to fucking do with science.
就是这个真理的判断。知道二氧化碳排放的这个总量以后，我就马上意识到，这个数量是非常非常小的。也就是说，我们比如说我打个比方，我们现在是人均排放1.4吨碳，哦，是碳，不是二氧化碳。二氧化碳跟碳是有个3.67的这个系数。如果是450 ppm 这个目标定下来以后，那么今后的人均排放量只有是0.8吨碳，
就是这是一个天花板，对吧？
对，就说一下子你的掉下来，就是从1.4到0.8，这个是人还不能变，就是还是65亿人口的。
So they're talking about they've set these like limits, right? The hegemonic scientists have set these limits under this premise that the population is not going to grow. Like, okay, we've set this hard limit, which, I mean, 6.5 billion people, we are already at 8 billion now, right? This is like 10, 13 years later, or we've already passed by quite a bit. So it's putting a limit on what was then the cap of the population. You know, it's just going to be harder and harder when there's more people.
是，如果是人口还要增长的话，那么你这个数字还要往下降。
那么这次 IPCC 的方案当中，并没有对包括中国在内的发展中国家提出要求啊，它并没有要求你减多少，不是吗？
它是确实是没有对发展中国家减排设定这个绝对量的，它对发达国家设定了量。这个中期2020年，它有25%到40%的减排，到2050年要有80%到90%还多少的一个减排，它是有这个数据。 但是它有个总量，全世界就是还有大概是8000亿吨的二氧化碳可以排。那么等于这个蛋糕的数量是定下来的。那么 RPCC 对发达国家有一个定量的排放的控制，那么就是等于是先它定量的切走一块蛋糕，这就明白了吧？这个切走的蛋糕它不是很大 ，RPCC 不是很黑啊，它的蛋糕是2.3倍。这2.3倍什么概念呢？也就是今后发达国家的排放人均的排放的全是发展中国。
So, do you guys understand what he's saying here? Is that if you already have a bunch of emissions, then reducing your emissions is going to be easier. It's like if you're like a morbidly obese guy and you weigh like 300 pounds and you need to lose 20% of your body weight, you're still going to, what does that end up being? Can't do math off the top of my head. That's 60 pounds, right? And then you still weigh 240 pounds. You're still like really fat. But if you weigh like 120 pounds and you have to lose 20% of your body weight, that's 24 pounds, then you're down to like 100 pounds or under 100 pounds. So you're at that point, you're like, you've gone from sort of skinny to like way under a healthy weight. So 20% to something that's already big is nothing compared to something that is starting out a lot smaller. Is that a good analogy to talk about the fat person and the skinny person? You know, that's why they go on The Biggest Loser and they can lose like tons of weight because they have a lot of weight to lose. Then you can lose a large percentage of your body weight and still be fat. But if you're already skinny and you lose that same percentage, you're in a lot of trouble. That's why you're fattening up before January 1st. Exactly. That's why we are eating all the pies, drinking.
您指的是历史上的差。
Oh, are we back? We got glowjacked. Let me know when it's back and we're good. We're good? Okay, good. Glad we caught that. So what he's talking about now is that, like, so think about all the developed countries, right? Is that they were able to develop without any kind of restriction on emissions, right? Like the U.S. Was able to develop without Klaus Schwab saying, "Oh, you have to limit your emissions or anything," or an IPCC or whatever, saying, "Oh, you have to reduce your emissions by in 30 years or something." No, a lot of countries were able to develop without any kind of restriction.
人均排放是发展中国家的7.54倍。
但是 IPCC 这个方案它是不算过去的，它只算当下，而且他认为发达国家率先减了80%还不行吗？
就说这里面我们就是先不跟他去争论，咱们先把以前的事放一放。那我们就看今后减排，就这个词说起来很好听，同我刚才讲到的排放权分配是一回事，这个很好理解。 8000亿吨的蛋糕是定下来的，尽管减80%，一步一步往下减，但是你基数大呢？你的基数是发展中国家的4.8倍，你就往下要怎么切蛋糕，它就马上就是切走是你的2.几倍了吗？所以说这里面是包含了一个非常大的陷阱。
陷阱？
这是一个陷阱。如果是今后的排放。 是一个非常严格的国际上的限制的话，那么这个二氧化碳的排放权。
Okay, so if we have a future that's based off of carbon limits, emission limits, then carbon dioxide emission rights will become a very, very scarce commodity. Isn't that really interesting? Isn't that an interesting way to think about this, right? All of a sudden, the right to emit carbon has become, it makes sense. It makes sense that it's become a commodity, right? And it's a thing that can be paid for and traded and bought. We're already seeing this, right? You can already like buy carbon offsets. It's become a commodity that is enforced by a scarce commodity that is enforced by the existential threat of climate change. All of a sudden you've created this currency, right? Carbon emission as a currency, which also restricts growth. So it's like a win-win for imperialism. It's fucked up.
就会变成一种非常非常稀缺的商品。
就是你想要排，就有可能得买。
你要不够排，你就得要买。就说，如果是你承认二氧化碳排放配额，或者叫排放权是一种稀缺商品的话，那么这个8000亿吨里面蛋糕分配的过程当中，都分一点，多少分一点，是多大的利益。
当然，我们也看到，就是有发达国家的首脑在当时就表达了也比较强烈的意见，他会认为说，我给我自己定指标还不行吗？
那当然是不行。你定指标就是你要切一块更大的蛋糕嘛。那我可以这样定指标行不行？我以后的排放，我人均排放跟你一样多，这我不过分吧？我历史上比你少排很多吧？那今后的40年的排放，我跟你一样多。或者中国说的更白，我从1990年到2050年，我的排放只需要你的人均排放的80%就行，那行不行？
那他会觉得说，中国作为这个人口大国。
So I mean, he's saying that basically what he's saying is that countries should be able to develop, right? They should say, well, my carbon limit should be the same as yours after I develop. Because it's not fair to start the clock now on this carbon emission limit before countries have had a chance to develop, catch up with the rest of the world. And the interviewer is saying China's population is so large it'll be unfair, right? They'll have such an advantage, but let's see what he says.
你这么一乘的话，那个基数太大了。
那么我就是说问你了，那么就说中国人是不是人？这就是一个根本的问题了。那为什么中国就中国
Are Chinese people? Yeah, they're humans. Why should they have, just because there's more Chinese people shouldn't mean that they should have less of the pie, right? Every human being is equal.
这个就是同样的一个中国人就应该少排。你这个算是以国家为单位算的，还是以人为单位算的？
也可能他会觉得说，那现在常规的算法都是以国别计算。
好的，那么行了，那我就不跟你算了，我没有必要跟你算。为什么？那就是说，莫纳哥多少人？那我们中国跟莫纳哥比。
Yeah, it's not fair to compare China to the smaller.
他现在提出的一个概念就是说，我不管你是人均还是说贫富，现在只以碳排放大国为界限。
我可以承认我是碳排放大国，那你给我们一个数，我们该怎么
？And this is the thing that's wielded against China, right? Is that they're a big carbon emitter, and this is why China has pursued this, ecological civilization stuff, because they want to show that they can be world leaders too. They can, okay, you guys are putting forth these goals, we'll meet these goals, and not give the West any reason to attack them. We'll play by your rules.
能排多少？你发达国家你要排多少？你为自己分配了一个数了吗？不是，你这个80%就是分配了一个数了吗？你是把你分配的大比我们分配的小，是不是？
Oh, thank you, Lumpia. Thank you for the super chat. You're the best.
那我就说。我们如果是一样的行不行？根据基巴的方案，他27个发达国家切走的是多少？切走的是44%。他多少人口？他11亿人口， 余下来的55亿分56%的蛋糕。那么你说公平不公平？
他这个方案可能完全就没有按人口来计
穆克尔
算。
本人，问问穆克尔本人这个方案公平不公平？要我没有机会，要我有机会，我要问问发达国家的领导人本人，你觉得这个方案公平不公平？
那现在除了 IPC 这个方案之外，不是一共有7个方案吗？有没有一个是？
没有一个 ，RPCC 的方案还是最好的，其他的方案是越来越黑。
您现在是在直接指责 IPCC？
为什么不能指责？科学就是可以批评。
Why can't I criticize? Science can be criticized.
既然你承认你是科学，你就要经受得住人家的批评。
Now that you admit you are science, you have to withstand criticism. And I say this to Noah. You say you are a Marxism expert, you have to withstand criticism.
我在中国科学写的文章，我就是直接批评 RPCC 的。
而且我看到您的措辞其实是很激烈的，有这么严重吗？
那你算账嘛？假如告诉你，中国今后从2020年以后，每年花1万亿人民币去买二氧化碳排放权，你会怎么想？你觉得公平不公平？
科学家在谈论一个科学问题的时候，为什么要用比较激烈的、带有情绪色彩的字眼？这样是否合适？
你批评他们的方案不公平，他们是不会理你的。所以我必须用。
This guy is so based. I love it. If you criticize them, they'll ignore you. You have to use very strong language to get people's attention. You have to use strong language to get people's attention. And I don't think most people realize this. Or maybe they do. Maybe they, once you point it out, they say, oh yeah, you're right. That's true. That's true. That's why I had to call Noah a liar. I had to call attention to it. This is why we have to be polemical. This is why we have to say things that sound kind of crazy on Twitter, right? We have to kind of make a crazy share image for our video or put a very polemical title in the headline because you have to get attention. Get the attention, and then you can add all the nuance later once you have the attention. But you need to get people's attention. You need to wake people up to this stuff.
非常激烈的语言引起别人的重视。
当时您在那个大会上演讲，明确提出这些观点之后，场上有什么反应吗？
常常就是有一个美国人，他提了一个很好的问题。他现在的问题呢，就是说我们可能要考虑的是怎么样的一个行动的问题。
您怎么回应的？
中国该怎么行动？那么我就说呢，我也同意，行动是第一的。我说中国很简单，我说如果是我对中国政府的建议，中国政府应该制定一个雄心勃勃的长期。
You see what he's saying? You see how he completely questioned the validity of all of these metrics, of all of the mainstream quote-unquote science, of all these bullshit targets. But then he said it's his job to make sure the Chinese government should make an ambitious long-term commitment to reduce emissions. Because it doesn't matter whether they think it's bullshit or not. They have to go along with it. They have to.
减排放的承诺，这个冲击排放的承诺就是一句话
Just a
从
sentence.
1990年到2050年，中国的人均排放量坚决不超过发达国家同期水平的80%。不管你怎么减排，我都要比你少，并且我一定要做到，并且你发达国家已经把所有的基础设施建完了，中国还没有建呢，很多。那在这样的发展阶段背景下，中国应该提出这样的方案，让全世界看到中国在应对气候变化上。
Let the world see that China is far more ambitious than you in tackling climate change.
我们要比你们雄心勃勃多。后来美国人也没这办法给我争了。后来有个比利时的人告诉我，他说你的回答得很好，他很赞成。
您理解的这个公平的概念是什么？什么是公平？
我对公平的理解，我把排放权
I see emissions. My understanding of fairness is that I see emissions rights as development rights, as fundamental human rights.
视为发展权，视为基本人权。所以我就说，人与人之间应该有个大致相等的排放空间。
你看，您原来研究古气候的，都一直很专业的科学家，但实际上这次气候谈判，你一直是在做政治解读，甚至在提出很多的方案跟策略。别人对你的这个身份提出一定的疑问，觉得适当还是不适当？您觉得呢？
你就说，我搞科学研究的就不应该去了解这后面的政治。
这倒不是，他们可能会觉得科学家甚至不应该以国家利益为前提。而应该比如在
She's asking, like, shouldn't you stay in your lane and just do science? Like, you shouldn't be involved in, like, political stuff. You shouldn't be putting your political opinion out there.
人类共同利益的这个前提下去制定方案。
我没有否定人类的共同利益啊，维护发。
Shouldn't you just be concerned with the well-being of humanity?
发展中国家的利益，保证发展中国家的联合国的千年发展计划落实。这难道不是人类的利益吗？这是国家利益吗？这是个人。
And he's saying it's all the same thing. The interest of mankind is the national interest, is the personal interest. This is the fundamentally different way of looking at things that we all need to get to, right? What's good for you is good for me. It is not about competition, and it's not about might makes right. It's not about Darwinism. It's not about may the best man win and a fight to the death to see who survives. No, it's win-win cooperation. We do better as humanity when we cooperate. Anybody knows this. Anybody knows this. Cooperation gets us further. Socialized production is what created the industrial boom, is what got us to where we are today. Socializing the means of production.
我从来没有这么想。
假如像您所说的，现在这个方案发达国家又不接受的话，如果他就这么拖下来，这几年下去，会不会就情况变得更糟了？
我很乐观，我是地质学家，我研究。
I'm a geologist. I study the evolution. She's asking, like, how can he be optimistic? How can he be optimistic? He says, I'm a geologist. I study the evolution of this environment's climate over hundreds of millions of years.
几亿年以来的这个环境气候演化，所以我很乐观。
So I'm
这
optimistic.
不是人类拯救地球。
This is not the problem of human beings saving the planet. This is not the problem of human beings saving the planet.
的问题是人类拯救自己
It is
的
the
问题。
problem of human beings
Don't think
saving
you-
themselves. It has nothing to do with saving the planet. The planet doesn't need you to save it.
地球是没有关系的，地球用不着你拯救。地球温度比
There were times that the Earth's temperature was 10 degrees higher than it is now.
现在高10几度的时候有的是。地球二氧化碳浓
There were cases that the Earth's carbon dioxide concentration was 10 times higher than it is now.
度比现在高10倍的时候有的是。地球都是这么演化
The planet has evolved in this way, and everything is fine.
过了，都好好的。
毁灭的只是物种。
毁灭的只是物种，
Only species are destroyed. Only the human beings are destroyed.
毁灭的是人类自己。所以是人类如
So how is it? So is it how human beings save the human beings save the human beings, not how? So it is how human beings save human beings, not how human beings save the planet.
如何拯救人类，不是人类如何拯救地球。
到底能不能拯救自己？我们最核心的东西究竟取决于什么？
取决于文化文明。人类在这个应
Can human beings have a root when dealing with various
对
challenges?
各种挑战的时候，能不能有一种更有包容性的、更有弹性
The emergence of a more inclusive, resilient
的一
civilization.
种文明的产生，或者是我们现有文明有一个很好的这个发展。
Or can our existing civilizations have better development? I mean, this guy is mega based. It is not about saving the planet. It is about saving humans. It is a great video, isn't it? Oh my God, this guy is... That's it. That's everything. That's everything. Everything in a nutshell there. I love this guy too. It's so telling too to see how this stuff has changed over. I mean, when they're talking about buying carbon credits or whatever, it's like that's just like a normal thing now. It really has turned into what is like a currency, right? It's a currency to hold the world back. It's a way to hold the world back. Climate change, right? Climate change is, I don't know, it's fucking bullshit, man. It's fucking bullshit. They'll call me a science denier for that, right? My hair is all fucked up now from the headphones. What do you guys think so far? That guy was fucking based. He was based. Everyone should watch that video. It's fine, thank you. Science. Science is... It's a problem. It's a big problem that we're dealing with now. But for the last part of this stream, I wanted to read to you guys some passages from this book that I feel like this book is so important. It's one of the most important books, I think, in understanding what the fuck is going on today. What the fuck is going on with the left, with environmentalism, with the rise of fascism, because we can feel it in our bones, right? Everyone calls everything fascism, right? The word's overused to the point where no one even knows what fascism is, but we can feel it. We can feel it in our bones. We can feel that sense of like Nazi Germany is somehow returning to the world. We're returning to that state. We feel it, the past bubbling up again. But it doesn't look anything like what it looked like in Nazi Germany. And you have all these liberals, screaming like, oh, Donald Trump and MAGA and all that. That's the Nazis. The right wing is just, they're fascists, and fascism is when you don't say my pronouns, and, they don't get it. They don't know what fascism actually is. And that's what's scary, is that fascism is returning. And people can sense that, but nobody knows what it is or how to identify it. So I think that this book is something that everyone should own and read, because it explains so much about what's going on. Fascism and Social Revolution by R. Palm Dutt. It's such a great book. And it was written in 1930, I believe. $1935. Yeah, Dutt gang, right? Dutt was really onto something. He's very underappreciated, I think. But I'm going to read you guys some stuff. So, under the chapter, what is this chapter? Chapter 8. I can't read Roman numerals. Yeah, that was 8. The theory and practice of fascism. And this section is called Demagoguery as a Science. Bolshevism is knocking at our gates. We can't afford to let it in. We have got to organize ourselves against it and put our shoulders together and hold fast. We must keep America whole and safe and unspoiled. We must keep the worker away from the red literature and red ruses. We must see that his mind remains healthy. And that is a quote from infamous gangster Al Capone. who the movie Scarface is based off of, I believe. The above quotation from Al Capone is a suitable introduction to the anti-communist ideology of fascism. The earnestness of this appeal of a thief and a gangster to maintain existing society unspoiled in face of the communist menace might appear at first blush comic, but in fact it is purely reasonable. None have more sincere concern and zeal than thieves to maintain the institution of private property, without which their profession would come to an end, and they would find themselves faced with the unpleasant alternative of having to work for their living, not be parasites. On the other hand, they cannot publicly proclaim the principles of thievery and gangsterism as the basis of their stand for public purposes. They have to proclaim the most high moral principles to maintain existing society unspoiled and to keep the mind of the worker healthy. This high moral tone runs through all fascist propaganda and accompanies their gangster exploits. Nor should this be thought a contradiction. The two characteristics invariably run together in periods of decay. As Plekhanov has remarked, Marx said very truly that the greater the development of an antagonism between the growing forces of production and the extant social order, the more does the ideology of the ruling class become permeated with hypocrisy. In addition, the more effectively life unveils the mendacious character of this ideology, the more does the language used by the dominant class become sublime and virtuous and woke. That's the quote in here. It says woke. No, I'm just kidding. I added the woke part. But I mean, isn't that like what wokeness is? It's like, I mean, that's woke fascism, right? The further we get to those contradictions, the more the language becomes hypocritical. The more it becomes like I can't think of the right word. The more it becomes like separated from reality, basically. It's like they say one thing, they say they're for all these high moral superiority things, and the worse things get. I think this is why a lot of people they don't believe anything that comes out of mainstream media or anything, because they know that everyone's full of shit, that they try to be so morally superior, but it's all talk. It's all talk. You know, we hear from China saying that the U.S. needs to grow its economy, needs more jobs and whatnot. And that, I mean, from a Chinese person, it's like, yeah, it's true. But when we hear it from our own ruling class, we know, oh, they're full of shit. You know, like, look at Bernie. Full of shit, that guy. I mean, even Trump to a degree, right? These guys sell us on this populism and that everything, we need to do better. We need to make the world better. But they're full of shit. They're totally full of shit. Just by its attempts to suppress forcibly in place of resolving the contradictions of modern society, fascism reveals most profoundly its reactionary role. For this, it strangles social development. First, fascism seeks to suppress the class struggle, not the abolition of classes, but the violent, permanent subjugation of the exploited class to the exploiters and crushing of all resistance. This means, even if it could be successful, a condition of permanent inner war within society, with consequent extreme waste of social forces and increasing destruction of all possibility of collective achievement. its stabilization would mean the replacement of liberal capitalism by a caste of statutory servile system. By a caste or statutory servile system. As the 19th century liberal capitalism system or of formal free contract increasingly disappears under modern conditions of large-scale industry, its breakdown raises ever more sharply the two alternatives, either socialism or the common ownership of the means of production and the common obligation of all citizens to labor and sharing of the fruits, or the servile state. That is, the statutory compulsion and regulation of the labor of the wage-earning class for the profit of the property-owning class under a general framework of state control. With the abolition of the right to strike, the fascist state represents the second alternative, that is, the servile state. Now, the servile state reminds me a lot of something that I've been talking about a lot this year called the servant economy. It rings very, very similar to the Starbucks union debate, right? Service work. Our economy is, it's all service work. That sounds like the servile state, right? We're not producing anything. We're all just part of the servant economy. Second, fascism seeks to suppress the contradictions and conflicts of capitalist economy brought about by the advance of technique and the development of mass production and productive power. Can you guys hear my stomach grumbling? Don't worry, the stream won't be too much longer. As before, it seeks not to resolve the contradictions in the higher form of socialization of the already social forms of production, but to suppress them by artificially restricting the productive forces, throttling down production to fixed limits suitable to the monopolistic capital, preventing new development, clamping down on state bureaucratic control, and even, in extreme cases, artificially maintaining obsolete small production forms, restricting machine production and encouraging hand labor. The reactionary, stagnating tendencies of monopoly capitalism receive their extreme expression in fascism. Now, doesn't that sound, limiting development, artificially restricting the productive forces, throttling down production to fixed limits suitable to monopolistic capital. That's degrowth, right? That's degrowth. That's intermittent renewables. In extreme cases, artificially maintaining obsolete small production forms. That's the back to the land, localism, small is beautiful. That's what that is. This sort of going back and farming your own potatoes that I talk about all the time. That's what that is. Third, fascism seeks to suppress the contradictions of international capitalist development. That is, the contradictions between the single unified world market and international specialization of production on the one hand, and the competing monopolistic groups and state complexes on the other, by forcibly shattering the basis of international economy and organizing the retreat towards the limited, closed-in, isolationist economic basis, the line of so-called national self-sufficiency or autarky. Do you guys remember in the article, the essay that I wrote, where the American politician was talking about decoupling our economy from China? That's what this is. That's what this is. You can't roll it back. You can't roll back and say, no, we want to just be a walled off, from the rest of the world. No, we're an international global economy, and you don't go back from that. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be a global economy. We just need to transition away from the imperialist mode, right? The imperialist mode of production. We need all of the countries in the world to develop and to help each other develop and become more economically dependent on each other, because the more economically dependent you are on somebody, the less likely you are to kill them, right? Peace through development. That's the whole point of the Belt and Road Initiative, is to create peace, world peace, through development and through economic relationships. If you rely on someone economically, you have less incentive to destroy them. Peace through development, right? This is how we get there. This is how we get to world peace. This openly retrograde line means the cutting down of international trade and communications, the raising of the costs of production, and the lowering of the standard of living, and the increasing balkanization of the capitalist world. I mean, he is literally in 1935 describing what is happening today. This shit is happening today. This is crazy, right? It's like Nostradamus. Where would this whole line, if we continue for the purpose of our analysis to ignore the dialectics of struggle and development, which would make its realization impossible, and imagine a successful increasing straight line realization of the tendencies of fascism, lead in modern capitalist world in the 20th century? It is evident that this line would be a line of increasing stagnation and decay, leading more and more away from the complex, interdependent modern forms towards more primitive forms, and finally, barbarism. Now, for all these degrowth socialists who say, "Give me socialism or barbarism," who love Rosa Luxemburg, right? Isn't that what she said? Wasn't that her quote? "Give me socialism or barbarism." And that's the scary thing too, is that they use Rosa Luxemburg's name now to push degrowth. Like the Rosa Luxemburg Institute now pushes degrowth, which is barbarism. It's barbarism. It's pushing us away from socialism. It is evident that this line would be I read that already. The first stage of this process of the working out of fascism would be the stage of an elaborately bureaucratic and non-progressive state capitalism. The bureaucratic regulation and restriction of the entire economy, while still maintaining capitalist forms. But while the capitalist forms would still be maintained and the surplus value would continue to be extracted, the old free play of capitalist production and circulation could no longer be permitted. So it's like they're like rolling back capitalism, right? This is why it's so easy for them to say, well, we're anti-capitalism, we're anti-capitalist. Yeah, because you're transitioning into a fascism, basically. You're anti-capitalists who want fascism. That's what Greta Thunberg anti-capitalists are. Degrowth anti-capitalists. They're fascists. They're ushering in fascism. Where I lost my place here. Accumulation and expansion would have to be strictly controlled, since the normal working of the capitalist process would otherwise rapidly burst the bonds of the attempted regulation and harmony. Isn't that funny? The harmony of the limits, the limited society would be disrupted. The steady state economy would be disrupted. If we were to increase abundance, right, increase growth, the capitalist class would tend to become a permanently fixed class or caste, with no room for new accessories to its ranks. See, and this is why they all say, oh, the capitalists, they just want growth and growth and growth. They want growth. Capitalism is pro-growth. No, they're not. They're not at all. They want to keep things the way they are. They do not want anything to move forward and progress and grow. They want to degrow, because that way they can maintain their position. The attempt would develop by means of control of investments and similar measures to stabilize on a basis approximating to the simple reproduction of capital and to avoid or minimize the inherent disturbances of expanded reproduction. This would mean a static, non-progressive tendency, a steady state economy, right? With regulated quotas of production, prices, levels of wages and profits, limits to growth. New inventions would be strictly regulated and checked, as is today widely recommended. Science and education would be discouraged, save for as is indispensable for military purposes. This stagnating, non-progressive, parasitic character of monopoly capitalism has already been observed since the beginning of the imperialist era. Lenin, in his analysis of imperialism as the decay of capitalism, sharply brings about this tendency. Here's a quote from Lenin. Like all monopoly, this capitalist monopoly infallibly gives rise to the tendency to stagnation and decay. In proportion as the monopoly prices become fixed, even though it be temporarily, so the stimulus to all progress tends to disappear, and so arises the economic possibility of slowing down technical progress. Slow it down, degrow it, guys. That's it. This whole book is so good because, I mean, I just found a couple of really good quotes, but the whole thing is just full of examples of degrowth and why degrowth is fascism. It is. It's fascism, and that's what we're facing today, and we must oppose it. We must oppose fascism and degrowth. Degrowth is fascism. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. Well, in a 2 hour and 20 minute nutshell. But, you know, I encourage my friends at Midwestern Marx to challenge their own organization in pushing the degrowth agenda because it's the wrong line. It's the wrong line to toe. If you truly are a Marxist, truly are a Marxist-Leninist, a communist, a socialist, a humanitarian, an anti-Malthusian, degrowth ain't it. And Midwestern Marx, whether you like it or not, that's what they're pushing. And we got to put an end to that. We cannot support that. We cannot support degrowth. And that's the show for tonight. That's the live stream for tonight. So if you guys have any questions or comments, concerns, please bring them up now. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Please subscribe. Since I've started streaming, I've lost a lot of subscribers, but I'm going to keep going. I've gained a lot too. I shouldn't say it's just lost. Oh my God. We kind of should get Chinese food for dinner, right? I like that you're putting this in the chat. I shouldn't have weighed in on the decision because now I'm going to like taint it. You guys decide what we're going to get what we want anyways, but yeah, decide what we should get for dinner. Become a patron. That would be really helpful. That would be really fun. The patron bonuses are fun because we're gonna do some voice chats. That's gonna be up and coming. We're gonna be putting out more merch. We're growing it. We're doing good stuff.
The new shirt.
Oh yeah, I'll show you guys the new shirt design. If you didn't see it already on Twitter. I love doing shirt designs. It's one of my favorite things. I'm a real graphic design nerd at heart. Chris Hedges loves Extinction Rebellion. Yeah, I've heard he is kind of like a degrowth guy, right? Chris Hedges. So here's the new design. which is perfect, a perfect ending for the stream. Join China's Belt and Road Initiative, World Peace Through Development. This is what we should be doing, right? The biggest thing, I said this on the last stream, on Caleb's stream with Peter, the way that we can fight degrowth is by telling our friends and family that China is not our enemy, right? We heard what the American politicians are pushing is that like China is, and it's all projection, right? They say, oh, China's trying to dominate the world. China's trying to take over. They're trying to like do this, that, and but it's all projection. It's all projection. This is what the unipolar world order has been doing. And what Russia and China are trying to do is help this new multipolar world order emerge, where we have Russia, China, and the U.S. leading the whole world in developing. You want that as an apron? All right, I'm gonna look into this apron thing. Why an apron? Is it for cooking? Are you like a chef, Lumpia logic? But yeah, we need to, I mean, imagine that. Imagine if all three of our countries came together to develop the world, like all these countries that have been underdeveloped, to help them develop, to help our economies develop. Win-win cooperation. This is the world that we want. The world we want. So, yeah, I have this shirt up on Spring. They make pretty good shirts. I've gotten samples. They're good. I got my other shirt from there. The Nuclear is the Future. You want a chef apron too, Jenny Lynn? All right. I guess we're making aprons. Maybe I'll make a special design just for aprons, and I'll make it like cooking related or something. But I did a design for I did women's tees here. If you want like a special women's tee. And what's this called? A sweatshirt. I wish I could show you guys. There's like all kinds of possibilities for what kind of products. Oh, why can't I look this up? Spring shirt products. That way you guys could say like, oh yeah, I want like cell phone cases, all kinds of like. You'd wear an apron while grilling? I have an apron for cooking that I use sometimes. Like if I'm wearing like a nice shirt I don't want to ruin. It's all shirts here. I don't care about the shirts, hoodies. I mean, hoodies are pretty cool. I like hoodies. This doesn't seem right. Tank tops. Here, accessories. Here we go. This is what I wanted to look at. Accessories. Do you guys want to fade? We do Space Commune masks. Oh, man. I think FedPost actually did. I don't know if you guys remember the FedPost. They CRK came up with a lib pandemic, and then they got face masks that just said lib pandemic. That shit was so funny. Neck gaiter, mugs. A mug would be cool. We've got kind of like a coffee theme going. Oh, that would be funny to do a mug that's like anti-Starbucks. anti service industry. Like I make my own coffee. I don't go to Starbucks. That'd be pretty funny. Water bottles, tumblers, pint glasses. Pint glasses would be kind of cool. Phone cases. Fanny packs would be cool. I like fanny packs. Accessory pouch. Tote bags. I don't know. If you guys have like... I don't see any aprons so far. Backpacks. No aprons yet, though. Hats. Pillows. You know, there's another... I think like Zazzle you can do... Has like way more options. I'll come up with some aprons. The people want aprons, we'll make aprons. Anyways. Yeah, like the stream, subscribe, join the Patreon. And I think that's it for tonight. Any other last minute things you want to add? You need to make some frickin' fried rice. I know, I'm starving. I think that's it for tonight, guys. Oh, and yeah, it's the holidays. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Kwanzaa. Fuck Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa's like a made-up holiday. Isn't it like a made-up fucking bullshit holiday or something that like horrible people made up or something? I'm gonna get in trouble for that, but I think Kwanzaa's actually kind of like a weird, I don't know. Happy fucking holidays, guys. I'll probably try to stream at least once, maybe twice next week during the holiday, the in-between holiday time. But I wish everyone the best, happiest, merriest, loveliest holiday weekend. And I'll see you next time.